This is not a quantum computer, but rather a redesign of the supercomputer. So that leaves us with a question. How do you make quantum computers in Satisfactory? Well, today we find that out, as well as getting a deeper understanding of our first Tier 5 space elevator part. And it's safe to say both of these parts are rather intense to make. But before we dive into that, a massive thank you for all the support on the channel recently, and thank you to everyone that has subscribed in the last 24 hours. You guys are absolutely awesome. But without further ado, let's just get straight into the video. This might look quite confusing, and it somewhat is, so I do recommend checking out my last video if you'd like to get some more information about this mind map. But if you've already seen that video, then fantastic. Let's move on to what we need to discuss today, and that is quantum computers. I have broken down roughly the best recipe, in my opinion, for making quantum computers, which is this thing right here. But looks aside, there is still a lot that we need to talk about, and of course it incorporates a lot of brand new ingredients. This is everything that you are going to need to make this thing. We have the raw resources, which is things like, copper ore, water, raw quartz, deuterium ore, iron ore, coal, bauxite, sulfur, and you've guessed it, SAM ore, or strange alien metal ore, which of course is incredible. Now, when it comes to resources gained, this might make no sense, but trust me, it actually will in just a little minute. And in regards of other resources, this, in my opinion, is the best recipe for supercomputers and everything else that we will be discussing today. And of course, we have got our 6 brand new items: the bronze A-frame, which I'll show you in just a minute, the SAM ingot, the SAM liquid byproduct, diamond part 1, and of course our quantum computer. There's a few different recipes of this thing, which I'll show you very quickly. And we have 3 recipes in total, 1 basic recipe and 2 alternate recipes. This is the one that I like to choose, and again, I've calculated every single recipe, including the alternate recipes, in Satisfactory, and I figured out that this is the best one for me, but again, you might prefer the other ones. And the reason why we know that what they're making in this trailer, which you're currently seeing in the background right now, is a supercomputer, is because when you see the ingredients going into the manufacturer, and then you compare it to what we see here, it's the exact same ingredients. That's how we know it is a reskin rather than a quantum computer. Again, this is the quantum computer now. So feel free to use whatever recipe suits you, but again, personally, this is my favorite recipe. So let's talk a bit more about this. So first of all, for the supercomputers, we are obviously going to need some copper ore, water, copper ingots, and wire. That's pretty simple, pretty self-explanatory. And something that you will see quite a lot is, rather than just making copper ore into copper ingots, instead, I like to mix it with water. This is done using the refinery, and I absolutely love the refinery, because rather than, for example, getting 30 copper ingots from 30 copper ore, you now get 37.5 copper ingots from 15 copper ore. So it's a lot more productive. You're essentially getting more bang for your buck, is the way I like to look at it. You can also see this pattern repeated down here with raw quartz, where I mix it with water to form a better quartz crystal. And of course, we've got deuterium ore, where I mix it with water, and I do the exact same with iron as well, to make iron ingots. So there are a bunch of alternate recipes in this. But eventually, let's say you've crafted your wire, your computers, your electromagnetic control rods, which sounds a lot worse than what it actually is, do not worry, and of course, your batteries. You can then form your supercomputers, which just making this thing by itself, in my opinion, is already a big accomplishment. So congrats if you're even able to make a supercomputer, because even I struggle with doing that sometimes. But when it comes to the new recipes, a few of you might have seen this on yesterday's video, but I've laid it out in a much better format to try and help you guys out a little bit more. When it comes to anything that you see with images, this is basically new items, and because we don't know the names of the items just yet, I have put the image next to it just so we don't get too confused. But obviously I haven't put an image of coal because we all know what coal looks like, hopefully. But of course, let's start with SAM ore. So I think that SAM ore goes into a SAM ingot, and I will show the clip very quickly in the background. Again, if you didn't see yesterday's video, I do break this down a lot more. but it does appear that there is some sort of liquid inside of this thing. Oh, I've moved up. Rather than it being a complete solid, which actually would make sense, because when it goes into our octagon machine, it then forms a SAM liquid byproduct, which again, when you see the clip of it, it seems a lot more it seems shinier when you compare it to actual water in the game. Again, here's an image of water in a pipe, and this is the image of the SAM liquid byproduct. It's not the same, unless they've changed the way water looks, but I doubt it. When it comes to Caterium ingot, again, I like to break it down even further. Rather than just making Caterium ore into Caterium ingots, I like to incorporate it with water. And here's the reason as to why I do that. If you use the basic Caterium ingot recipe, for every 3 Caterium ore that you mine up, you only get 1 Caterium ingot, which is not fantastic. However, if you use the pure Caterium ingot alternate recipe, for every 2 Caterium ore that you mine up, you get 1 Caterium ingot. So rather than only getting 33% Caterium ingot for ore ratio, it's now 50%. Of course, you do have to combine this with water and you have to build a refinery, but if you're trying to get extra resources, again, more bang for your buck, then try to use these recipes in the refinery. Again, this is a repeated pattern you will see throughout my alt recipes that I love to use. So far we've got the SAM ingots as well as the Caterium ingots combined, but we are missing one more thing. And remember earlier when I said resources gained? Well, this is where it's going to start to make a bit more sense, because we are dealing with aluminium ingots. And of course the best, and I think the only real way to make aluminium ingots is using the aluminium scrap, which combines the alumina solution and petroleum coke. And I very highly recommend doing this. You are probably going to consume a bit more oil. However, the reason why I recommend doing this rather than coal is for 2 main reasons. 1, coal is going to be vital in update 1.0. As you'll see from the short clip in the background, and as I'll explain a bit later on, coal is how you make the quote-unquote diamonds in the game. So you are going to need every scrap of coal that you can find. And the second reason is that you get a much better alumina solution to aluminium scrap ratio. If you use the electrode to aluminium scrap alternate recipe, you get a 3:5 ratio. Whereas if you use the basic aluminium scrap recipe, you get a 2:3 ratio, which isn't as good. There is one other recipe, but when I saw that it used sulfuric acid, I instantly just said, nah, no thank you. And when it comes to alumina solution, I like to use another alternate recipe. Because as of right now, if you were to use the basic alumina solution recipe, yes, you would still consume bauxite and water, but you'll be making less alumina solution than the recipe I use, and you'll be making extra silica. So if you do need extra silica, I guess you can go with this, but if you're using bauxite just to make alumina solution, then I actually recommend going with the sloppy alumina alternate recipe. And yes, of course, it does use a bit more water, but the ratio is much, much better. And eventually when you combine the aluminium ingots, the Caterium ingots, and the SAM ingots, you then get the bronze A frame, as well as that SAM liquid byproduct we were talking about a little bit earlier. And both of these are used to make quantum computers. Not just the bronze A frame, but you also need the byproduct of the machine 1, which again is like the octagon looking machine. So that is actually rather important. So that just about breaks down the supercomputers, the bronze A-frame, and the SAM liquid byproduct. But there is one more additional feature we need in this thing, and that is diamonds. And this is where things start to get a little bit complicated, and it's all to do with this. As we can see down here, coal is used to make diamonds. That is 100% clear. The diamonds then travel along this conveyor belt. When we follow the diamonds to its eventual destination, we can see it goes into this machine right here, which I've always said is a manufacturer. But I think I was actually mistaken, because if we come back over here, we can see this manufacturer, which is a manufacturer, has no slope on the sides. But when we come back over here, this suddenly does. There's now a slope here. This and this is not the same machine. So the question is, what the hell is this? My second guess was, okay, it must be a blender. You must have to combine the diamonds with water or something. So I booted up Satisfactory to test out this theory. I went over towards the direction which the camera was, which is about somewhere here. And I realized, oh yeah, the slope, it all lines up. But look at the conveyor belt system. The entrance, or the exit should I say, to this thing is over here, which seems fine. Until you go back and watch this to realize the entrance to this machine is much further towards the left. And again, the entrance is nowhere near the left, it's, if anything, towards the far right. Then I thought maybe they flipped around the footage, so in actual theory, this is what it looks like, and then it would make sense with the blender. But again, it doesn't match. When I was rewatching previous parts of the trailer, I realized this is the building where we are getting this POV from, and you can see the diamond heading in this way, and the camera angle is roughly up here, looking downwards like this. So this building, or this machine, is fairly tall. So I tested it out with the refinery, but no, again, not a match. In fact, none of these production buildings are a match. So quite frankly, I don't know what machine this thing goes into. Is it a brand new machine? It might be because it deals with diamonds, but we don't know that. We can't say. So this is definitely a kerfuffle. I'm not gonna lie. I'm kerfuffled. Don't be surprised if something else does indeed form with the diamond to form this first diamond part. However, let's say you've eventually created this thing. You then mix it with the SAM liquid byproduct, the bronze A-frame, as well as the supercomputer. You then have yourself the quantum computer. And essentially everything you see here with, again, regards of whatever this is going to be, is the recipe that you need. And hopefully it'll be able to help a few of you guys out. But we're not quite done there. Because as you can see, we've got a quantum liquid, which is basically like the quantum computer's byproduct. But this isn't useless. Hell no, this is used for something very, very important. And that's all to do with a fusion ball and power shard, which, as you can see, this thing is chunky. And there's one reason as to why this thing is so chunky, and the answer? Nuclear pasta. And again, this might look really confusing, but if you saw yesterday's video, this would make a lot more sense. When it comes to the nuclear pasta, you are going to need a bunch of copper ingots to turn into copper powder. This might look like a very simple recipe, just like what we saw earlier, but do not underestimate this. You're going to need a good amount of copper ingots. For an example, this is a spreadsheet that I made for update 8. If I wanted to make 20 nuclear pasta, which I was going to, I would have needed 4,000 copper powder, which requires 24,000 copper ingots. But luckily, because of my copper ingots recipe that only needs about 9,600 copper ore, rather than about the 24,000 it would have required. Moving on, we then have the same sort of deal here with the aluminium ingots, except this time you're crafting it into aluminium casing, which is pretty cool. We then have a couple of, reinforced iron plate, steel pipes, rather basic recipes that you should have sorted in the mid-game stage, which then create things like heavy modular frames, fused modular frames, which in itself is a pain to use because it involves nitrogen, but you also do get some extra water in there as well. And again, in total, I do use quite a few alternate recipes to make my nuclear pasta, and also, of course, just to make life a little bit easier as well. But let's say you have nuclear pasta all sorted out. That is brilliant. You do need a few more things if you would like to make this fusion ball. One of which is concrete, which luckily is fairly simple to make. Again, I used the water recipe because I like water apparently. You also need iron plates, again, simple enough to construct. But you also need something called a quantum crystal, which, remember earlier when I said that this would be used for something later on? Well, now you know. And as far as what I'm aware, the only thing that this liquid is used to make is this. But of course, you need more than just a liquid to make a solid. And that item is, in fact, diamonds. Yeah, believe it or not, diamonds is used to make that crystal that we just saw. And you also are going to need diamonds to make the diamond part 1, which is used to make something I'll talk about in just a little second. So yes, diamonds is very, very important when it comes to update 1.0, and of course you need a lot of coal for that, which is the reason why I use petroleum coke rather than coal when it comes to the aluminium ingot recipe. See, it all starts to add up now. Eventually, when you have got the quantum crystal the iron plate, the concrete, and the nuclear pasta, you can then form this nuclear ball, which looks absolutely terrifying and also rather incredible. With this said nuclear ball, you can then combine it with the plutonium waste to then form the fusion ball. I would spend more time talking about this, but I've already explained it in the recent video, so I'm not going to dive into this too much, because I don't want to be repeating myself too much for my audience. Like I said, all of this is used to make the fusion ball, plus the power shards, and I haven't yet talked about the power shards. Let's dive into that a little bit more, and let's start with the diamonds, because remember when I said that you need diamonds to make this for something else? Well, this is what it is. When you combine the diamond part 1 with the quartz crystals, which yes, again, I used the water recipe, with this, if you guys remember the recipe from earlier, we then have to use again the SAM ingot, Caterium ingot, and the aluminium ingot to form the SAM liquid byproduct to form the power shard. You actually get Caterium liquid as a byproduct from this. So when you combine, again, you need SAM liquid, you need quantum crystals, you need the diamond part 1, and you need quartz crystals. When you combine all 4 of them, you get the power shard with the quantum liquid byproduct. And that is how you make power shards, quantum computers, and the fusion nuclear ball of doom, death, and destruction, and all that is bad. I hope that this video was able to help you guys out, and I know this was a lot of information. Before we head out, a massive thank you to Chaos Rising, Jan Mateliko, and Mao for becoming members on the channel. You guys are absolutely amazing, and thank you guys so much. It's the best way to support my channel, and I really do appreciate you guys becoming Knights of the Realm. Thank you. Either way, thank you very much for watching. Click on the left or right of your screen to see more of my content, and subscribe for daily Satisfactory content. Have an amazing rest of your day, and remember, Godspeed.